Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Day In, Day Out podcast. Woo! Today on episode 200, no, 313.
Ooh,
Yes, I am very lucky to have Clint Callahan on the podcast today. He is a licensed clinical social worker, therapist, and wellness strategist, as well as a newly qualified life coach. How are you today, sir?
I am fantastic. Thank you for having me. I look forward to our conversation after we got over those technical difficulties.
Yes, oh, good God, yes, technical difficulties. If anyone says life is an easy, smooth path, ignore them because they have not lived life whatsoever. As I said beforehand, it's the ups and downs which bring us together, not so much the happy, joyful times. I feel closer to you already, sir. Closer. Have to ask now.
Mhm.
How long have you been a licensed social worker? How many years would you say?
So I have been a licensed social. I've been working in social work since 2000. I've been licensed since 2007. So I'm gonna do some fast math here. That would be 16 years now. I've been a licensed clinical social worker, and I've been in the field for 23. And I've talked to probably thousands of different people about thousands of different subjects. I've worked in everything from maximum security prisons to end of life care to HIV/AIDS care, severely emotionally disturbed kids, adults, drug addiction, you name it, I've seen it all. So it's one of those things that like I tell most people, after working in a maximum security prison, there's
Yes.
not much you're going to tell me that's going to make me go, you're really, really screwed up. Because I've sat across people that have 24/7, 365 to lament about the choices they made and yet still not learn anything.
Mm. I like it must be kind of difficult to talking to all these different people, which
Mm-hmm.
okay, like when it comes to the prison life,
Mm-hmm.
they obviously made one or two wrong decisions in their
A
life.
couple.
But like you go, okay, you, but yet not see any sort of form of responsibility taken from
Mm-hmm.
them. It must be kind of hard, sort of like going, okay, some aspects of humanity just doesn't seem to get it. Like,
Yeah.
how do you combat that to sort of show up the next day and the next day into work to be
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm trying to help you in a positive manner.
That's a really good question. So one of the things that I remember is so one of my professors, and when I was in my master's program, she taught crisis intervention. And
Mm,
crisis intervention is a very, very specific modality of therapeutic intervention.
mm,
And one of the things that they said, which always stuck with me, was as a social worker, as a therapist, as anyone who's trying to be a helper, you need to remind yourself one thing: you are the lightning rod. Don't hold on to the lightning rod. Because if you hold on to the lightning rod and you smell Kentucky Fried Chicken, that's you cooking. So don't hold on to the lightning rod. You need to be that, where their stuff is their stuff. All you can do is say, this is what I have to offer. This is the ways that you can change. These are the things that you can do. But if you don't take the step, there's nothing I can do. And it's reminding yourself of that with every client, with every interaction, with every moment when you're doing this work. Because if you don't, you burn out so fast. You can smell chicken cooking literally every single day.
mm. Yeah, no, I can imagine because like this is the thing. It is like there is. I can only imagine there is times where you'll be talking to people and
Mm-hmm.
like with that analogy, it's like yes, it's you got to empathize rather than sympathize. When
Mm-hmm.
you sympathize, you're gonna get like yeah, you are KFC. Uh,
Yes.
Empathize, yeah, you can like go there it is, I see it, and take that step back
Mm-hmm.
trying to do that they're trying to do that on a day-to-day basis. There is times where I just can imagine where okay, especially when it comes to sort of someone who's either had terminal illness like news and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like this, trying to like go, okay, so due to circumstances which may be out of your control, this is
Mm-hmm.
where you find yourself. I want to sympathize with you but I can't, like,
Mm-hmm.
Do you sometimes like? Does it sometimes feel a little bit cold when you're doing that? I don't know.
It's interesting because like I actually I talk with that about my clients is I let them know that part of my job is to have this invisible boundary
Mm,
where they can fling whatever they need to at that boundary in front of us, between us, and all I'll do is analyze what they're flinging, but it's not going to splatter on me because, and that took me 23 years of doing this work to get there. The first 3 to 5 years that I did this, I was a hot mess because I didn't have those proper boundaries in place. And I didn't recognize, I didn't heed the words of my professor of being the lightning rod. And so I would take too much on, too much responsibility onto myself, and I began to burn out. And so that's one of those processes that just like any job, you learn and you decide, do I want to keep doing this? And if I do want to keep doing this,
mm-hmm,
how can I keep doing this? Because
mm,
that's what it is with any career, with any job, with any profession. You hit those walls, you hit those stumbling blocks, you hit those issues, and you have to then make a choice. Do I continue going the way I'm going, knowing it hurts me and it's bad? Or do
mm-hmm,
I take that step back and I take a breath and I go, how can I make a change? What can I do differently to still empathize, but also protect me? Because if I'm burned out, I'm not any good for the person in front of me because I'm not bringing my best self to them. Instead, I'm bringing a hollowed out Kentucky Fried Chicken, blackened chicken shell, and that's not good for anybody.
uh, I think Kentucky Fried Chicken is going to make a lot of money off of this episode. Yeah, we've been dropping KFC bombs left, right, and
All
center.
right, fine. We'll go to Church's Chicken. We'll do some Louisiana chicken. We'll switch it up.
Yeah, like the Popeyes are, because you're in America.
There
Yeah,
we go. There we go. I like
I was like,
it.
let's see if we can get some of that rich chicken money.
That's right.
No, because like, yeah, it must be like. Do you find now that you've been
Mm-hmm.
in the like sector for 23 years that
Mm-hmm.
now because you've got that barrier, can
Mm-hmm.
you like? Do you know how to turn it on and off at will? Because there's sometimes I imagine, like, okay, like you know what I mean. Look,
Mm-hmm.
you've got your kid and stuff like this and saying
Yeah.
stuff, and yeah, I go, yeah. Oh, and you might
Uh-huh.
switch into therapist mode, and it's like,
Oh
okay,
yeah.
and just like, okay, and they pick up on it, or do they not notice?
Uh, the most interesting thing that I found is so a lot of my life I spent probably 38 years of my life being a people pleaser,
Mm,
being a being you know being a chameleon, not basically being myself, trying to anticipate everybody else's needs because I was bullied so much as a kid
mm-hmm,
that it kind of it in a weird way it gave me the superpowers of being able to read people and understand what people are feeling and be able to summarize it and give it to them as fast as I can so that they can see because I was always just trying to avoid it to protect myself. But in doing that, I had to learn 38 years later that I wasn't bringing me there. I was being other people. I was bringing facets of myself.
mm-hmm,
And so once I learned just to be fully me and fully present, I'm that way with everybody. I am exactly who I am on this podcast with everybody that I meet. But I also know how to turn that shield or that barrier on and off because I have to also be clinically separated when it comes to the work that I do. Because if I don't, then I take it home to my kids and I take it home to my wife and I take it home to my friends and my family and those kind of things. And that doesn't help any of us either because you have to have that separation in what you do because one of the hardest things, especially being a man who was raised in the United States, was always pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You do it yourself. You don't cry. You don't, if you break a bone, you rub some dirt on it, you walk it off, you do all the kind of stuff, right? And so being in a field where it's predominantly women, where I have to understand multiple different dimensions of emotions instead of the running joke that my wife and I had when we were first dating is I had 6 emotions and 3 of them weren't emotions. They were body feeling states. I was I was happy, sad, angry, hungry, horny, and sleepy. and she's like,
I
well,
can see
three of those are only body states. I'm like, yeah, but they feel real to me, so that's it. But we used to laugh about that because there's right now there's 87 different emotions. Can you believe that? There's 87 different variations of emotions in the way human beings are.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. I like, you know what? I can't say I've experienced them all, but yes, yeah, like hungry, like horny, and like yeah,
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 yeah.
express all of those all at once, and yeah.
That's right. Exactly.
Let's just say, like, yes, I'm like a stallion, sir. Yeah. Satisfy a lady, and yes, fall asleep quite
Satisfy a lady, roll over, and have a sandwich. Go to sleep. There you
quickly.
go.
Ah, what's that noise? What's that ping noise? It's the microwave. Yeah,
All
well
right,
done.
we're done. Let's eat.
Yes. But I do find it a little bit interesting because, like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, for a person who says they were a people like pleaser, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you've chosen a field of work which,
Mm-hmm.
let's just say, and well, look, honestly,
Yeah.
it's not a people pleasing role. It's everything of the opposite. Like,
Yeah.
so how on earth could you, like, how did that sort of process in your mind dealing with that?
Well, when I grew up, I went through bullying all the way up and through high school,
Yeah.
and but that also made me want to understand. But also because of that, I was angry and hostile and frustrated, and I was an angry kid. So I had to, so my parents put me into therapy when I was about 12, and I was in therapy for a couple of years to learn how to manage and understand what was going on inside of me, what my emotions were, those kind of things, and that began just my love affair with understanding people because from my mom I got she was an unlicensed social worker. She started an Emotions Anonymous chapter in our town.
Mhm.
She worked at the church, she worked at the local children's home orphanage. She did all she had let she let people from Emotions Anonymous live in our basement, and she helped tons of people. And my dad was a geological engineer, so I got the engineering mindset with the social worker heart. So the way that I look at things is a very interesting combination of head and heart. And so because of that, one of the things I love to talk to people about is I like to break things down and equate it to math, which is pretty funny because when you have an engineer father try to teach you math, you learn to really hate math really, really fast. But now I use that all the time in my practice because when you break things down to numbers for people, and really emotions are kind of an equation. It's thoughts plus feelings equals action or reaction. And
Mm.
depending on which side of the equation you're on, that's what happens. So when I think it and I feel it, it creates an action. But usually that action is because of another human being. So
Mm.
that human being then has a reaction. They have a thought, they have a feeling, which then creates a reaction to me and thus creates the cycle that we get stuck in between people. And so by recognizing the math piece of it, which is by taking the 87 different feelings that we have and doing the math on how this feeling is actually these three feelings combined, which is telling you this story, and then this story is making you think this way, and then breaking it down that way, it allows you to stop and take a breath and see it for what it is, which is all made up. That's the thing I've learned anything in the 47 years I've been alive and in the 23 years I've done this is from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed, and
Mm.
every other human being on the planet, I'm making it up as I go along. All the stuff that I just said, I'm making it up as I go. I have 23 years of experience and 47 years of life experience to back it up, but I'm making it up as I go. And if people can recognize that, the world is not as scary because anyone that you run into, any interaction you have with another human being is number one, it's a chance meeting. Number two, you're both making it up as you go based on whatever your life experience is and how you're perceiving what the other person is or is not doing. And then you try to process that in real time to have hopefully a good, solid, calm, polite, nice interaction.
Mm. Yeah, I do. Like, I hear you, and you know what? A lot of that I do agree with because, like the whole thing is like, yeah, if you try to lay out everything in your life in one sort of like strict script and go, oh yeah, this is how this scenario is going to play out. Huh.
Mhm.
Yeah, it never works out that way.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think anyone who tries to do that gets quite like stressed and
Hmm.
feels that sort of anxiety on a day to
Hmm.
day basis rather than sort of like, okay, uh, this is like, I would like my day to be like this. If they put in
Mm-hmm.
sort of like, okay, little markers or sort of goals where they would
Mm-hmm.
like their life to be, or
Mm-hmm.
the day they would like it to be, they'll be a lot healthier and maybe a little bit more focused if they did that, rather
Yeah.
than sort of like going, okay, this is my strict script. I'm
Yep.
going to play this out, and everyone's
Mm-hmm.
going to play their part. Oh,
But that's the problem, right?
mm,
That's what we do every day. We have the director in our head that lays out the script of the way this interaction is going to go. And then we forget, but here's the problem. We forget that our director doesn't tell the other people involved what their lines are, doesn't tell the other people involved what their marks are, doesn't tell the other people involved where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to show up, or what they're supposed to do. And so we go through our life expecting, having this story of the way the day is going to go, and it's going to fall into place because we're the star of the show, obviously. And so because of that, we hit these bumps and these roadblocks, and that's where a lot of frustration happens for people, is because this is reality. We Everything inside of our head, everything that this story tells us in real time, creates our reality. So
mm,
if we can tame the story and tame our body to recognize the story for what it is, we can slow down and we can then really write our story instead of react to our story.
yeah, but like, this is the thing. Yes, okay, we've like, yes, you have a director, I've got a director, we all got directors. But
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing is now, one of the things which I would push back on with
Mm-hmm.
regards to like,
Sure.
okay, star of our own, like our own movie.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone actually sees themselves as the star as their own movie, so
Mm-hmm.
therefore they don't actually like take responsibility for whatever actions they go through on a day-to-day
Mm-hmm.
basis. Like, yeah, going back to like some of the people you have met in like the
Mm-hmm.
prison system, where you've talked to
Mm-hmm.
them and go, yeah, can't you see what you've got? Like, why you
Mm-hmm.
are in this situation? And that's like,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't my fault. It was this, and it was that, it was
Yeah.
that, and they palm it off. You know?
And I would beg to differ because even the victim is the star of their own show. It's just the victim show.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's a different kind of reality because
Mm,
basically we're all basically in a reality TV show, which is the most powerful reality TV show there is, which is the one that's playing out inside of our heads, right? And that's the thing. Even when you're a victim, even when you blame everybody else for what's going on in your life, they still have to do it to you. So you still have to be the central character that everything is happening to. But now you get to shift the blame and point to everybody else and say, well, if this wouldn't have happened, then I wouldn't have done this. If the police wouldn't have done this, then I wouldn't have done this. If this wouldn't have happened, those kind of things. But it always has to come back to you because the only experience we have is the story that we tell ourselves and the life that we live.
yeah, and like, you know what? Yeah, if people did think the way you like eloquently put that out there,
Mm-hmm.
I would say yes, there'll be a lot less people who went into the prison system, and
Yes.
there'll be a lot less people which would do like stupid and harmful things to
Yeah.
themselves and their lives and other people around them. Uh, but it's a case of, I would say there are a number of people which just like self reflection, like
Mm-hmm.
taking like taking responsibility and control
Mm-hmm.
of their life, like really having like being directed by their own personal director to make something better for
Mm-hmm.
themselves. Sometimes it like you can go, yeah, sometimes it's down to environment, which it was against them.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a large number of people where it's down to not environment, but their own actions,
Mm-hmm.
which they take themselves down. And I think it just comes down to they're not willing to sort of like, yeah, really
Mm-hmm.
sort of look at themselves and break themselves down and like basically find out who they truly are.
And that's one of the things, right? Is one of my favorite classes in when I was getting my undergraduate degree was it talked about a theory which was person and environment. And
Yes.
that's the way that I was classically trained as a therapist is not to just look at the human being, but to look at the human being, where the human being lives, what side of town they live, what their socioeconomic status is, what, was there abuse in their life, was there trauma in their life, have they been to war, were they a victim of violent crime,
Mm.
all these different aspects that all come into your life that shape and create who you are. And so by looking at it from a multifaceted approach, you get a much better view of what is actually going on inside this person, because it's the story. Again, it always comes back to the story. We are told a story from the day that we're born until we start taking it over once we get out into the world. And then other people and other things are continuously feeding us stories, society, news, ourselves, our friends, our teachers, our lovers, our enemies. All the things are feeding us this story, which then
Mm.
we get a chance to choose whether we adopt it or deny it, believe it, or think it's not real at all. And those are the only choices that we have in life, is that everything is ultimately a choice. You can choose to be happy every day if you do the things to help you improve your happiness every day, which is sort of like one of the things they have scientific evidence that shows that doing a gratitude journal and writing 3 things you're grateful for in the morning and doing that every day gives you the beginning of a positive outlook for your day, which then allows you to weather the issues and the problems that happen throughout the day. And that's one of the things, is that part of me pulling myself out of when I was my most burned out and my most depressed after my mom committed suicide when I was 29. And she did that because she got an autoimmune disorder, which basically turned her from a 50-year-old to a 90-year-old in the space of about a year. It would liquefied her muscles and her joints in like very slow real time. So she was in pain 24/7, 365. So it took me a long time to recognize, to not accept and not endorse her choice, but to recognize that she had to make a choice because she couldn't stand the way she was living her life. And that started this spin, this grief and loss spin that I went into for about 3 to 5 years, where I had to now make a choice after that, because I became everything I didn't want to be. I was disconnected from my family. We just had a newborn son. The 2008 market collapse happened in the United States, and so we lost our house, and I had to go live with my in-laws with my wife and newborn son. And all these things happened, and I had to stop and decide, is this how I want my life to continue to go? I can continue to feel beaten down. I continue to lament and wish that I could have done better for my mother. But at the same time, I did everything I knew how to do at that time. Hindsight always gives you 100 other things that you could have done, but it doesn't mean anything, right? Because you can't do it because it's
Yes.
done. It's over.
Hindsight is 2020, as
Yes,
this.
it's hindsight's 2010, man. Hindsight's 2010.
Yes, but like no, but it's always a, how can I put it this way? If you play the game of hindsight, you're always playing the
Yeah.
game of a shitty stick. Unfortunately,
Yes, you do.
yeah,
Yes, 100%.
yeah. But like this is the thing, like okay, like from that type of sort of okay tragedy with like yeah,
Mm-hmm.
your mother getting sick and then taking her
Mm-hmm.
own life,
Mm-hmm.
to the 2008 housing crisis where okay,
Mm-hmm.
you found yourself like okay having a
Yeah.
house and then living with them, with your
Mm-hmm.
in-laws. Like
Mm-hmm.
what was the sort of like was there a pivotal moment where you went okay, enough is enough,
Mm-hmm.
I need to take control of my story rather
Yeah.
than sort of letting circumstances write whatever it's like tale of woe was going to come
Yeah.
out of that.
Well, I mean, really, it's kind of it's one of the most cliche things. I
Hmm?
watched my son being born,
Okay.
and in watching him being born and seeing this new life come into the world, the first time I heard his heartbeat on the ultrasound, the first time I recognized that I was now going to be in charge of a human life, made me. I had to, because the thing about men and women is parenthood is different for men and women, because biologically women become mothers the moment they become pregnant because of all the hormonal changes that happen in their body. For men, it literally is a choice. We have to flip the breakers in our brain and turn on the genes to be a present and engaged father. We have to. That's part of our job as being a father, is doing that. And so when he was born, it just made that change in my brain where I'm like, what am I doing with my life? Why are we doing this? because we literally had, he was born and we had to move out 3 months later. So we knew all this stuff was coming. So this was, we just had a newborn. We just had to pack everything up, put a bunch of stuff in storage, move about 100 miles away. All these things completely change our entire life. And so I had to begin to make that change. And so I went back to a lot of stuff that when I was in graduate school, they had a comparative religion class. And so I studied Buddhism for a while. For about 5-6 years, I went to teachers, practiced Buddhism, did these things. And so I went back to meditative principles and just being more present in my own life, because I became so disconnected and disillusioned with everything. And so I started the process of just stopping and slowing down and just trying to figure out, what do I want? It was the first place that I started, is just, how do I reconnect? How do I connect to this child? How do I connect to my wife? How do I connect to myself in a way that is meaningful so that I can be present again? Because I was checked out for about 3 to 5 years. And it was one of those things that once I began that process of meditation and then journaling, I started meditating every day and journaling every day. And right now I still do that practice. I meditate for 3 minutes in the morning, and then I journal for 2, and for the first thing in the morning for 5 minutes, so that I can set my intentions for the day. And then
Mm.
at lunchtime, I journal and I meditate again for 3 minutes of meditation, 2 minutes of journaling. And I do that to check and make sure that I'm still on the right path, right? And then I do that at night before bed. I look back through my day and I look at that and I go, okay, did I make it through my day? And did I get from the day instead of just make it through the day? Because those are two very different ways of looking at your day. Because if you just get through the day, by the time the weekend's here, then you just have to get through the weekend and you're not really engaging in your life. But getting from the day and learning lessons from the day helps you to then continue to stay engaged. And
Mm.
that's been one of the hardest things, is I had to change the way that I did goal setting, because I did goal setting like everybody else. That was the biggest shift that I made during that time, was how I chose to do goals. Because the way I was taught to do goals was, you figure out what you want, you figure out the mountaintop, right? Then you figure out what you need to do to get to the mountaintop. And when you get to the mountaintop, after you've done the things and you've got to the mountaintop, then you will be the person that you want to be. But I found that that's backwards. First thing you have to do is figure out, who do you want to be? Because if you know who you want to be, then following the path of doing is easier, because now you have guardrails and guidelines of being that kind of person. So then you take those to each base camp that you go to as you're climbing this mountain to get to this goal. And then you're able to get to the mountaintop and you're able to be the person you want to be and have the things you want to have and be deserving of it. Because how many people do you see that do all the things they need to do, get to the top of this proverbial mountain of wealth, fame, influence, whatever it is, and then their social life and everything else in their personal life blows up because they've become somebody else along the way.
Well, it's a simple case of this, and like you mentioned that, like honestly, like the mountain they're on is not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily the mountain they need to be on. If they're
Exactly.
not, yeah, because like this is the thing, we're all sold a realm of this is what success looks like. Ah,
Mm-hmm.
like fast cars, money,
Mm-hmm.
many a chick and like living in the big
Mm-hmm.
mansion, but
Yep.
that might not necessarily be success for like you as an individual. It might be,
Mm-hmm.
yes, like bringing up a family. It might be traveling around the world. It might
Mm-hmm.
just be like yeah, just having a basic 9 to 5 and just getting on with life with that. And like people that go, but that doesn't sound exciting. That doesn't sound like
Mm-hmm.
thrilling. It's not all like success is not always that. And if you always think it's going to be like, yeah, thrilling, like exciting and everything like that, I think I think you're I think you're a little bit lost in the
Yeah.
sense of where you might want to go. And when you like sit down, do some
Mm-hmm.
reflection, get
Mm-hmm.
some perspective, not
Mm-hmm.
on the world itself, but more
Mm-hmm.
importantly, on yourself. That's when, like, I think real growth can happen.
And I agree, and that's what I think is the thing. The interesting thing about growth is also, for human beings, it's a formula, and the
Mm,
formula is actually a pretty simple formula, but people don't like the formula. because growth is growth is struggle plus
Yeah.
time plus insight. That's what leads to personal development and growth. It's struggle plus time plus insight. And most people, they want to skip the struggle and they want to skip the insight. They just want the growth, because the only way you get insight is if you have a struggle that you've gone through where you have to then look at yourself and go, who is this person looking back at me right now? Who are you? What do you really want? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this to other people? Why are you doing this to yourself? What is going on with you? And until you take the time to do that and struggle through answering those questions, growth doesn't occur. I see it every day in life coaching and in doing therapy every day. I have one of my favorite success stories is I have a client who is ex-military. He was in the military for 23 years,
Mm.
deployed 9 times, multiple combat zones, all these different things. Came back, PTSD, depression, anxiety, social anxiety, all the things that you would expect for someone who's been through war. And so he started coming to see me, and it took him 7 months to begin to trust me enough that I was going to do what I say I was going to do, and I was going to be consistent with him, to finally do one thing that I asked him to do, which was, I just want you to stop before you do this thing of where you get really frustrated and angry, to just stop. And I want you to write down the story you're telling yourself for 2 minutes. That's all I want you to do. Every time he came in, and I saw him for 7 months every week,
Mm.
and he said, no, I didn't want to do it. No, I didn't want to do it. No, I didn't want to do it. And then finally he came in and he said, I did it. I'm like, okay, why'd you do it? Mostly because I wanted to shut you up. I'm like, okay, great. That's the best reason ever. Do that. What did you find out? You did this to make me feel stupid. And I'm like, no, that's not what I did. It. Why did it make you feel stupid? Well, because I looked at the story that I wrote and it was insane. And I'm like, okay. He's like, I realized that this is what I've been acting on for probably the last 30 years of my life, especially for the last 10 years of my life. This is the story I've been doing. And I'm like, okay. And then what did you do? I actually didn't do it. It gave me enough relief that I stopped. I didn't yell at my kid. I didn't get mad at my wife. I actually stopped and had a conversation with her about what was going on. And so I went back and I wrote some more. And I'm like, okay, and then what? He's like, I've written 6 more times since then. And I'm like, wow. Okay. And so he's been continuing to do that. And with that, it's helped him to, because he has greater insight into his life. And I gave him a bunch of other tools and worked with him on a bunch of other things for his
Mm.
trauma and things like that. But just teaching him these two basic skills allowed him to change his entire perception of the world around him, that it wasn't a completely dangerous place where someone was literally waiting to kill him around every corner. That's how he felt because of his trauma, because of being at war, because of the way that he grew up in his life. And what it did is, so I taught him box breathing, which is a scientifically proven method of slowing down and turning off your sympathetic nervous system,
Okay.
because, and I'll explain that. And then the journaling piece, because by doing those two things, it lets you attack this from a different way. I basically gave him what I call an emotional management plan, where he box breathed. So he did his box breathing, he did his journaling, he did some really light exercise for about 2 to 3 minutes, and then he went back and read what he wrote. And by doing that, he hit the stuff that was going on inside of him from a psychological perspective, from the physiological perspective of your nervous system, and from the physical perspective by taking those chemicals that when you're in the fight or flight response to get them to where they need to go. Because when you're in fight or flight, you have adrenaline and cortisol and all these wonderful, crazy chemicals in there that are designed to help you fight off a bear.
Mm.
But most of the time, when you're having these, I was having that just before this interview. My heart was pounding, it was beating, I was breathing really hard, and I'm like, okay, I recognize this. Right now I'm afraid. I'm feeling like I'm like there's a threat going on, like some reason I'm gonna die if I screw up doing this podcast.
That I haven't threatened him in any way, people. I just want that on the
No,
record.
no, yes, no, no. This was all inside my head, and I know it. But that's the thing is, even I know this, and I still succumb to this because the thing is we are all born with biological fear imprinted in us called our survival instinct. And there's two types of fear. There's biological fear and psychological fear. The biological fear is your heartbeat racing, your guts rolling, your lungs breathing really shallow, and your brain feeling like everything slows down when you're in fight or flight mode, right? That stuff happens. But then that triggers the story. That triggers the fear story in our brain.
Mm.
And the fear story for human beings is ridiculously short. I'm scared. There's a physical threat. I'm going to die. That's where it goes every time. My boss yelled at me. I'm going to lose my job. My wife's going to leave me. I'm not going to have a home to live. I'm not going to have a home to live in. I'm going to die.
Mm.
Whoa, that escalated really, really fast. But that's where our brain goes when we get caught in that fight or flight pattern.
Would you say this, like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, with regards to the sort of, okay, physical threat
Mm-hmm.
to many of us,
Yep.
like, that is not really there anymore. But
No.
with regards to the psychological,
Mm-hmm.
that is quite prevalent in, well, pretty much everywhere, because if you
Yep.
like turn on the news, watch it
Mm-hmm.
for an hour,
Yep.
it'll like basically threat, danger, kill, threat, danger, kill,
Yep.
threat, danger,
Mm-hmm.
kill.
Yep.
And then basically you go online, like it's a lot of threat, danger, kill, threat, danger, kill.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting this sort of overwhelming wave on their sort of not a day to day, like minute by minute, hour by
Yep.
hour, and it never seems to stop.
Well, that's because fear sells. It's the first and most primitive emotion that we have, and it's so easy to trigger. Because the thing they found out is this right here, this little wonderful squishy 3.5 pound blob inside of our skull doesn't know the difference. For all I know, when I was sitting here and I was feeling anxious like that, my body was basically telling me there's a tiger behind you ready to rip you apart. There's a bear in the office that is going to crush you and eat you right now. That's what my body was telling me. Even though I know that it was in my head and I was just like, okay, I'm freaking out because I'm just freaking out because I don't want to screw up, because I don't want to look like an idiot. And then I'm like, well, I've done this a whole bunch. So if you look like an idiot, that's okay. It happens. But that's the stuff, right?
You're
Because
never
this
going to
doesn't
get
know.
in front of me.
Because this doesn't know. It
Yeah.
triggers this. And when this gets triggered, what we forget is most people in the Western world look at this from the neck up and the neck down as two separate things. But it's not. 80% of what this gets comes from our body.
Mm.
So by taking control of our body through what I mentioned before, box breathing, which soothes your parasympathetic nervous system, and what box breathing is you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold your breath for 4 seconds, you breathe out for 4 seconds, you hold empty for 4 seconds, and you repeat that 4 times because it makes a box. So you do that four different, and so that's actually what I was doing 5 minutes before I got on this with you. Is I was sitting here and I was box breathing and I was like, okay, where is this coming from? What is the story telling me? The story is telling me that I'm going to say something stupid or do something stupid or something's going to go wrong or something bad's going to happen and it's going to destroy my entire life and I'm going to end up dead under a bridge. Because that's where it always ends up. You always end up dead somehow in this story because that's what the physical, physiological, biological part of fear, that's the end result, is you always end up dead because that's the biological part, because that's our job, right? Our main job as human beings is to stay alive and make more of us.
Mm.
That's what our biological urge and imperative is for most human beings on the planet. Stay alive, make more. That's it. But then this comes into play. The story that we tell ourselves about how it's the threat. Because
Mm.
this tells us there's a threat, but this tells us how. So by doing the box breathing and then taking this and dumping it out onto the page, you then go do a little something to redirect all the adrenaline in your system. And because right there, it goes like this. It stays in this area when you're just sitting still. It stays in your guts, it stays in your heart, it stays in your lungs, and it stays in your brain. That's where the adrenaline stays. Because this part of your body is always doing something. But this stuff isn't unless you talk like me. Then it does. But that's the thing, is as you continue to do that and as you recognize these things, doing the box breathing and doing the journaling taking that second to go take a quick walk, to go do a couple of push-ups, to do some sit-ups, to get that adrenaline going to another part of your body, and then coming back and reading the story gives you clarity. And
Mm.
it takes about 5 to 7 minutes to do.
Yeah, I was going to say that, like, because, like, with regards to, like, yeah, pent up adrenaline,
Mm-hmm.
like, we're human beings, and, like, basically, a human being for hundreds of thousands of years
Mm-hmm.
was, like, yeah, to always move around, do stuff, and it was like, yeah,
Yeah.
we are creatures of go. As
Yeah.
we both sit here right now
Yeah.
talking on this, like, yes, instrument of technology,
Yeah.
going across the Atlantic, both sitting down, this is
Yeah.
not normally our natural state.
No.
And yeah, if I like for me, I always find yes, running, lifting weights is one
Mm-hmm.
of those things which helps like sort of
Yeah.
dispel that sort of adrenaline because if
Mm-hmm.
you're not putting it, if you're not working adrenaline in a positive manner, it works you in some kind of negative manner. And I
Yeah.
don't know how that
Every time.
manifests,
Yeah.
but it will
Yeah.
manifest sooner
Yeah.
or later. And yeah,
And that's the
it's
piece,
gonna
right?
come.
And that's why doing it in the moment when you're having that cycle going through, when you
Mm,
recognize that and doing that in the moment helps you at least shunt it away so that it doesn't get caught here, it doesn't get caught here. Because
yes.
as long as your heart is beating fast, as long as you're breathing shallow, your brain is going to interpret that as there's physical danger around me. And so then your brain's going to do what your brain's job is. It only has one protocol for that, the fear protocol, which is survival, which is dump more adrenaline, dump more oxytocin, dump more all this stuff into the body to make you ready to fight and flee for your life because there's a bear behind you and it's going to rip you to shreds. And so if you don't control these two things first, this will just keep going adrenaline, 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 and then this is what leads you into a panic attack, because
Mm,
a panic attack is an over excess of adrenaline in the body to where when you feel like you're having a heart attack, what that actually is your heart is fatigued from being sped up for so long by the adrenaline that it literally is it's a muscle. And what happens if you overwork a muscle?
wow, it will fail
Cramps.
eventually.
You get cramps, right? You
Uh,
start to get the cramps. And so that's why when you think you're having a heart attack in an anxiety attack or in a panic attack, is because your heart is literally cramping. So that's what it is, because you're it's working too hard. And that's why when they give you that big old shot of like, Valium or any of those kind of things, all of a sudden you're just completely calm and your heart just goes and then it can finally rest and it go back to its regular rhythm, and
mm.
then you feel better, because that's the thing, right? That's the amazing thing, that this and this, when you put these two things together, they can work together amazingly, or they can make your life hell.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things like like picking up the skills to make things work in unison does take time. It does take effort,
Mm-hmm.
and we're in this world of instant gratification. No
Yes.
one really has quote unquote time for that
Mm-hmm.
when they should, really should.
Yeah.
Like I think if people like went, okay, I need to just take maybe 10 minutes here,
Mm-hmm.
20 minutes there. And I think with regards to sort of building that sort of resilience, it's
Mm-hmm.
just, it's not a case of you need to do everything on a major level. It's
Yeah.
just a case of you need to do things on a consistent level. It
Yeah.
might be small, but as long as you can show up consistently each and
Yeah.
every day, it will basically pay off dividends in a huge way in 100 days' time, 200
And
days.
that's exactly why I created the small changes, big impact 1% per day system, is
Mm,
because 1% a day, there's 14,440 seconds in a day.
yes.
14,440. That's a lot, right? So 10% of that is 14 minutes and 40 seconds. So if 1% of that is 14 minutes and 40 seconds, then what can you do in 15 minutes a day? Well, if you take 1 minute 15 times a day to just stop and check yourself, check your breathing, check your thoughts, and just check yourself. in that 1 minute 15 times a day. So every hour on the hour before you go to bed, just stop and check yourself. Or like what I do, 3 5-minute times a day, 3 5-minute times to stop and check myself to make sure I'm on the right path, because that is doable. It's digestible. And if you do it every day, then it creates a new pattern up here. And then you begin to want to do the pattern because it makes you feel better, because you recognize the benefits, because you've now done it and the reason why I picked 100 days is because that's about how long it takes to get a pattern to cement in your brain, is about 100 days. But I also tell everybody, build in failure. That's the most important thing I've learned about goal setting. If you build failure into your goal, you can't fail your goal. Because in mine, I give myself 3 failure days a month, because that's what I've worked it down to. Other people can do more or less, but I picked 3 because that's about 10% of a month. So it gives me 3 days. So if there's one day where I'm just like, I don't feel like doing this today, I don't, and I don't feel bad about it. But then I always get back onto it the next day, because by giving yourself permission to just not do it, to just be exhausted, to just be tired, to just be burned out, make it a part of the process, you then continue the goal no matter what, because that's just part of the goal. And that's what I tell everybody. Failure is never, the only failure that happens in goal setting is when you stop trying. So if you build in the failure, then you won't stop trying, because you've given yourself time to just stop and be like, yeah, I'm done. Don't feel like it. Don't want to do it. I'm taking the day off. I need a mental health day where I don't care about my mental health. Sometimes that's a mental health day too.
Yes, I hear you. But like this is the other thing. What people often forget,
Mm-hmm.
like they forget that okay, some of the greatest triumphs in life always come
Mm-hmm.
from failure. And like if
Yep.
you look at the most successful people, you'll
Mm-hmm.
like go, okay, it never comes from a realm of they had this perfect
Mm-hmm.
elevation to
Yep.
success and they like triumphed. Like
Yep.
many of the most successful people have been like if you look at it, they have been the greatest failures of all
Yep.
time. It's
Yep.
just it took all of those failures to like go, okay, I've screwed up this way, that way, this way, that way, this way,
Mm-hmm.
and now this is a successful way. I
Yeah.
like depending where you like look at it in history, Edison with the light
Yeah.
bulb. Like he
Yep.
goes, yeah, oh, I figured out 10,000 ways of not how to make a light bulb.
Mm-hmm.
But we, like many of the people, we the people, don't
Yeah.
actually see it that way. They like,
No.
and basically you judge everything with this one big failure, and
Yeah.
you ignore the sort of 100, 200 days, like 500 days of
Yeah.
success. But that
Yeah.
one day, that one moment is everything.
And that's another thing, right? Is success. I don't know about you, but in America, we've been always told that if you celebrate your successes too much, then now you're boasting, or now you're being conceited, or now you're being,
Mm,
now you're being these kind of things. And it's like, but here's the thing. One of the things that I do consistently with my life coaching clients and with my therapy clients is I constantly say, hey, you know that thing you just told me? How would you have done that 3 weeks ago? How would you have done that 3 months ago? How would you have done that a year ago? And they're like, oh, I have changed. Yeah, you need to celebrate that. You need to give yourself the win sometimes. You need to look back and go, wow, last time a person cut me off in traffic, I ran right up their butt and I tried to knock them off the road. This time I was just like, well, I guess they're probably they got to get somewhere really fast. So I'm just going to hit the brakes and let them keep going and not get mad about it, right? It's a very simple example, but for a lot of people, when they're stuck in that fight or flight wheel and they're stuck there, someone cutting them off, their director says, they shouldn't do that to you. Don't they know who you are? And then you get all entitled and all puffed up and angry and mad about it. And you do stupid stuff that can get you into really big trouble sometimes, because you don't know who the person is in the car in front of you most of the time. And you don't know what they've got going on. And as you know, in America, we have more guns than people. So you really need to be careful.
I've heard that. I've heard that somewhere. I'm not too sure where, but I've heard it somewhere. But like, yeah, when you talk about, yeah, celebrating success. Look,
Mm-hmm.
I, born and raised in the UK. If there's one place in the world where celebrating successes is like frowned upon a little,
Mm-hmm.
not really sort of like, nah, being a little bit distasteful with
Yeah.
that. It's here in
Yeah.
like the good old UK. Because
Yeah.
like this is the thing, like yeah, I do agree with regards to yeah, you've got to celebrate some of the small things because
Mm-hmm.
those small things are can be tremendous milestones
Mm-hmm.
along the journey of whatever like self discovery you're going on. But if you don't acknowledge the simple fact of that, you won't actually like. There's times you realize you don't know how far you've actually come, really like come like from who you were like yeah 20 years ago to who you
Mm-hmm.
are when you've like started to discover who you are.
Yeah.
That can be a huge change. The worst thing anyone should say hear from someone who hasn't seen you for some time is
Mm-hmm.
you haven't really changed. You're still the
Yeah.
same person. And you're like, oh, no. It's like, oh,
You're like, oh no, maybe I'm just being that person with you, and I have changed, but I don't know how to be that other person with you because you're so familiar to me. Like I have one of my best friends I've known for 40 years.
mm,
So when we get together and we see each other, we lapse back into all the history of stuff that we've been together. But at the same time, I know that he's changed and I know that I've changed. And
mm,
when we get together, yeah, we can slide back into the easy friendship. But we both have changed because now we're both married, we're both parents, we're both professionals, we've both been around for 46, 47 years, we've both done things and seen things and been places and all this stuff, and so you begin to see that. But it's easy when you first meet back up with somebody to slide back into that old routine from the last time you saw them, because it's almost, in this day and age, it reminds me a lot of when I meet back up with those old friends. It's almost like we just hit pause and then we just picked right back up and hit pause, unpause, and now we're back. And now we just have more gray hair and more wrinkles, and our kids are older.
mm,
It's that kind of stuff, right? But that you're exactly right, though. If you don't recognize, but that's the thing is, if you can't recognize the change in yourself, then how can you recognize the change in other people?
mm,
And by doing that, it's really, again, it comes back to fostering change and not even forcing change, but wanting to change, working towards change is one of the hardest things for people to do because this doesn't want to change. This doesn't want things to change. But yet, change is the constant that happens every day. But this doesn't want it because our brains love routine. We are routine machines. We love and hate them simultaneously. And so when change happens, guess how we see it? As a threat. Because back in 185,000 years ago, when there was change, that would mean maybe somebody new showed up that you don't know. Maybe something changed in the weather or in the water or with the animals or with these kind of different things, which
mm.
was a direct threat to your survival. So that's why for us change is so difficult, because change is considered the enemy for most people because it's the biological fear of the unknown that change brings.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. And like, this is the thing. I think with if I look at myself with
Mm-hmm.
regards to sort of like friends and not sort of acknowledging their change, if you spoke to me, say, ooh, 10,
Mm-hmm.
10, 12 years ago, I
Yep.
would have been like, okay, oh, yes, great to
Mm-hmm.
see it, but slipped into it, but not kind
Mm-hmm.
of acknowledged the sort of like, yeah, their personal milestones where they've
Mm-hmm.
gone and changed in their lives. Like yes, getting married, having kids. Like yeah, like succeeding, like doing like more promotions or like yeah,
Mm-hmm.
maybe had like a tremendous failure or anything like that, and lose
Yeah.
loss of family and stuff like this. How that may have changed them, or
Mm-hmm.
how it could have changed myself, because
Yeah.
it's one of those things where how can I say you like we all like at some period of time we live in the superficial rather than like actually like being in the real being in the visual, so it's like yeah
Yeah.
sometimes very hard to sort of pull that together, and over the course of time I hope I've got a little bit wiser along the way,
Yeah.
and like I can pick up on that in myself and others, you know.
And that's the thing about being in the superficial. Sometimes we also need to be there. Sometimes we're not ready to be in that kind of a vulnerable place with another person because
Mm,
maybe we're still coming to grips with it, or we are still coming to terms with it.
mm,
So sometimes being in the superficial is the process of us getting there, because really what the superficial is between people is we're kind of testing each other. Are you somebody that I can still trust with what's going on in here, inside of me? Or do I need to just stay and hang out and talk about the weather and nice, happy, superficial things, and about the fluffy exterior of my life and not the core of what's really going on? Because I don't know if I can trust you, because I've been burned before, I've been hurt before, those kind of
mm.
things.
No, I hear you. And like it's one of those things where they go, oh, like, and this is one of you. You may have heard the term of man up. You've got to man
Oh
up and
yeah.
like this. And like the whole thing is, I am a believer of yeah, you do need to man up, but man
Mm-hmm.
up is on a scale. It's a case
Yep.
of yes, and it can mean different things at different times. It's like okay, yeah, you need to talk, man up, like have that talk to like with the people you need to talk to. You need to man up. You might have to be that person who's the last line uh,
Mm-hmm.
of like holding everything together.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean one thing, and I think
Mm-hmm.
too many people like, oh yeah, man up means yes, be
Mm-hmm.
strong, be bold, and like
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's manning up. I think
Mm-hmm.
manning up is just so many things in so many different times.
Mm-hmm.
But it's knowing when you need to get help. It's knowing when you need to stand strong. It's knowing when you need to like, yeah, run. It's like,
Yeah.
but I think too many people. I think there's a lot of guys out there who don't actually understand it, or they don't get it, or they only see it through one perspective.
Yeah, I mean, and that also is, that's the, again, that's the caveman kind of brain perspective of, I need to be strong because if I don't hold this up, nobody else will. Instead of recognizing that it takes more than just being strong to hold things together. You have to be mentally strong, emotionally strong, physically strong. You have to be all these different types of strength to hold this thing together. Because if you're just physically strong and it's an emotional problem, that's going to cause catastrophe and disaster. If you have to be emotionally strong but you can't be mentally strong, you're not going to be able to process the emotions and the feelings in a proper way. So it's
Mm,
all these interlocking and combined versions to create a whole human being, to create a whole man. And it's one of the things is that, biologically speaking, we are still cavemen. Men are still cavemen, women are still cave women, because even though it's now the 21st century, everything inside of us, all the genes, all the genetics, all the pre-programmed stuff that is in there, which everyone's like, oh, there's no pre-programmed stuff. Yeah, sorry, there is. All the pre-programmed stuff is in there. We have instincts. What are instincts? Well, instincts are hundreds of millions of years of evolution that led to, hey, you should eat this, hey, don't eat that, because if you eat this, you're going to die. If you don't eat that, don't put your hand in fire, it's going to burn. These kind of things, these are instincts. We know when something's hot, you don't grab onto it because it's going to burn and it's going to hurt. And sometimes we still have to learn that lesson anyway. But that's the thing, right? Is we do these things, and if you don't have all those things, because really it comes back to, if you're not able to manage your time, if you're not able to manage your emotions, if you're not able to manage how you view the world, and you're not able to manage how you show up, what your purpose is in the world, you're going to feel lost and adrift. And that's how the world is. And that's what's so sad about it, is that it's so many people feel lost and adrift because they're looking and seeking external validation and external things to give them the sense of self, instead of taking the time and doing the work and going through the tough times of digging into yourself and going, who am I? What do I want? Where
mm,
do I want to go? How can I be the best version of me, whatever that is? Because that's the thing is, I'm still a work in progress, and I've been literally in therapy since I was about 12, on and off. So if I'm still a work in progress, and I went and got my master's degree, and I've been doing therapy and providing therapy and doing that for pretty much 3/4 of my life, y'all got to get started. because it's going to take your whole life, and you're going to get at the end and go, man, I'm glad I took that journey. I'm
Mm.
glad I made the choice to invest in me, because without doing that, life is exhausting, and it's sad, and it's frustrating, and it doesn't need to be. Because I did that for 15 years after my mom died. It took me 15 years to dig out of that hole and become the person that I am today, to be a reformed people pleaser, to not feel like I have to be a chameleon, to just be me everywhere that I go, and to just live my truth, which is all I want to do is help people get over it and get on with it. Because my job is to be a professional secret keeper and advice giver. That's the profession I chose, and I love it. And it's so much fun. And it's never boring. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And like this is the thing. Like when people like okay, you're like, oh well, you've been working on it that long and it's taken you 15 years to do that. But like
Mm-hmm.
yes, working on oneself, it shouldn't it's never it's gonna be a like 2 year mission, like
Mm-hmm.
5 year mission,
Yep.
10 year mission. It
Yep.
should be like, yeah, it should be from like when you are aware of what you need to work on yourself
Mm-hmm.
until you shuffle off this mortal coil or you
Exactly.
lose your faculties. That's how long the mission goes on for. It's
Mm-hmm.
until the day you like stop, the day you end. Uh, but yeah, people don't understand that. People don't realize it and the amount of hard work what goes into it. You know what I mean?
And life is a process.
Mm.
And life is always in process. And all you can do is, once you figure out what your process is, work the process, make adjustments, make changes, get help, ask other people. And that's the thing that people don't do. And that's the thing that I know that I wish I would have done sooner is I was stubborn. I figured I have all the knowledge, I have all the skills. I can physician heal thyself. Worst thing you can ever do. So I did that for probably about 7 years after my mom died. And then
Yeah.
I finally went to therapy to really reprocess the stuff that was going through. And it completely changed my perspective, because in here wasn't the same as what came from other people. The
Mm.
story I told myself was not the same as what my therapist was telling me. And that's the thing, is that's why asking other people for help is one of the best things you can do, because number one, it gives them the opportunity to provide you with care and to help you make a change in your life that they may have wanted for you forever, but they didn't know how to bring it up to you. So by you being able to do that and ask for help and to reach out to people, I don't care if you have to go for a therapist, get a life coach, whatever you need to do to to get someone that you can trust. Because the thing about having someone that is outside of you, and especially someone that's outside of you that you're paying for to do this, they have no stake in your life. So it's not a friend that has a stake in your friendship. It's not a spouse that has a stake in your marriage or in your life. It's
Mm.
someone that can look at you objectively and tell you, this is what I see is going on. What do you want to work on first? And that is why it's so important to have that external third kind of clinical detached piece, like we talked about earlier in this, is that without that, you may not be able to really fully see yourself, because everybody else that will want to help you, that is a part of your life, will have an agenda for what they want your life to look like.
Yeah,
I have
but
no agenda for what your life should look like. Your
yeah,
life is your life.
but also you are going to be sometimes fronting to those people because if you
Mm-hmm.
believe you've got a certain like status within that group, like
Yep.
yeah, you're going to keep up that front, and you're not really going to get to the heart of the real story. If you know what I mean.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm. I have to ask now, with
Sure.
regards to where you want this journey to go
Mm-hmm.
in the next few years, where would
Mm-hmm.
you ultimately want to see yourself, say, like a year from now? You've done a number of podcasts. You've like
Mm-hmm.
this is number 15.
Yeah.
He's turned into a podcast slut. Like, like, there you go. Finger snaps and everything, people. So where would you like to be in a year's time, would you say?
I would like people to know that it doesn't take massive change to make big changes. I want people to know that it takes small, consistent steps to do that, and that I've developed the framework using the 47 years of experience and 23 years of therapy experience to help you learn the psychological tools to beat burnout, to stop feeling like an imposter, and to become your authentic and true self. And I know it works because these are all the things that I used on me. And, you know, I'm not saying I have the answer, but I
Yeah.
have some answers. And all I want to do is I just want people to recognize that there are things available for you and you can make changes in as fast as 100 days if you do the consistent steps, if you have the right framework, and if you have the right thought process, and if you can get control of your body. Then that's what I want. I want to help as many people as I can in the next year. If I could help 100,000 people, that'd be great. If I can help 50 people, that'll be great. But that's what I want to do is I just want people to know that they don't have to keep suffering. They don't have to keep feeling the way that they're feeling, and that they can change. And yeah, is it a pain in the ass sometimes? Yeah, change is a pain in the ass. But you will be able to change if you begin to put in the work. And that's just what I want to do. I want to be a person that helps you learn the right things to do so that you can make the moves that you want to make, so you can have the life that you deserve. Because as far as I know, I only get one shot at this. And so I want to make this the best life that I can. And my life has always been, and what I want it to be is to be in service of other people. And that's who I am and who I've always been. Through all the stuff that I've been through, that's why the first thing he asked me was, is there any topics off limit? And I said, no, because
Mhm.
this is my life. So you can ask me any question you want, and that's fine. And there's different places you can reach me. And if you want, you can talk to me for 30 minutes and just have a free consultation. I have videos online, and I'm going to put out an ebook on how to beat burnout and all these different things for people to learn these skills, because my job isn't to hoard the skills. My job is to share the skills.
Mm. Outstanding. Loving that. Loving it a lot. Ah, good man. Good man. Now, have to ask. Now,
Mm-hmm.
always curious. Now, with all these years of wisdom and knowledge you've built up
Mm-hmm.
uh, over this course of time, like ah, going through the good, the bad, and the ugly as well. If I could send you back in time to
Mm-hmm.
speak to you in your high school years,
Mm-hmm.
what would be the piece of advice you would give yourself?
Don't change anything, because this will make you who you are and who you want to be. All the
Mm,
good, all the bad, everything. Because I'm a firm believer that if you pull and change any thread in your life, then you are no longer the person that you're meant to become. And I believe that all the stuff that I've been through, good, bad, and ugly and painful and sorrowful and all the things, made me who I am. It made me a better man. It made me a better therapist, a better life coach, a better husband, a better father, a better friend, a better everything. And so if it wasn't for all these things that happened, I wouldn't be me. And I finally got into a place after 47 years of, I really like who I am. And that's the best thing that that's what I want to offer everybody is I want you to love who you are, because because you're stuck with you. Sorry.
Ah, brilliant, brilliant. Ah, you know what? On that happy note, I have no more questions to ask you. Yes. Can you tell the lovely people out there how they can find you out there on these interwebs?
Yes, you can find me. So if you want to make a change and you're tired of feeling stuck and burned out, and if anything that I've talked about during this last wonderful time with our host here has resonated with you, you can find me at smallchangesbigimpact.net/info. On that website, you'll be able to get more information. There's a link to a free 20-minute training on burnout, or you can also just set up a call with me just to have a conversation to find out if what I'm teaching is something that will work for you. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at Small Changes Big Impact dot the number four and the letter U.
Mhm. Brilliant. Go out there, people. Get with him and yes, see if you can make those small changes on a daily basis with that big impact. Hoorah. Clint, it's been a joy and pleasure to have you on today, sir. A joy and a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad we got those technical things resolved because I
Oh,
wouldn't want to listen to myself talk for the
yeah.
entire hour.
You know what? Like, if it didn't work out, I've been sitting here with like puppets doing it. Like,
I like it. I
that's
like it.
it's an unorthodox podcast for sure. Yes, and I'd like to say thank you to you, my friends, my life warriors, for sticking with us all the way to the end of the show. Let me just say, please stay safe, stay well, be awesome, be excellent, be fantastic. Be all the positive bees you could be in this world and then some. And hey, make those small changes and bring on that big impact. Ha ha, have a good one. Peace. Oh, and we are out. Yes, there you go.